Greetings and welcome to Hexed Encountered. My name is Joe. In this video, we will be doing a playthrough of the game Paths to Hell, Operation Barbarossa, June to December 1941. This one's marked Volume 1. I'm not sure if there will be further volumes, but hope springs eternal, as they say. And this is part of the Platoon-level tactical series here on Hexed Encountered. This is the third game in the series that we are taking a look at. It will be followed by at least one more and possibly as many as 3 more games. That is a game time decision, so to speak. But in the meantime, we are going to take a look at this game from a gameplay perspective. I did previously create a first look video on this game, just kind of a brief look at the components, etc., and a brief discussion of how the game works, etc., etc. In this one, we will be, as I said, taking a look at how the game plays. For our playthrough, we will be playing scenario number 4, Towards Minsk Siege, and our historical introduction reads June 21st, 1941. That is probably a typo because the invasion began on the 22nd. But it does read, the frontier battle has begun. Soviet units try to create a new line of defense. The general situation is critical as the 3rd Panzer Division jumps to the new Soviet lines in an attempt to break them again in the Slonim and Vilna area and advance towards Minsk. Our order of battle: on the German side, we have elements of the 3rd Panzer Division. They will enter over 3 turns on the south edge of the map between hexes B516 and B1116. We'll have 2 companies of Panzer 38 tanks and a company of motorcycle rifle infantry. On turn 2, entering from the same southern map edge, we will get a company of infantry that will be bolstered by a medium machine gun platoon apiece, 3 of those. And we will also get 3 regular infantry companies as well. On turn 3, again entering from the south edge, we will get 2 heavy weapons companies, each with an 81mm mortar, and 2 medium machine gun platoons. In addition, in turn 3, the Germans will also get 3 offboard artillery strikes from 105mm artillery at full strength, as I said, beginning on turn 3. The German map edge for retreat purposes will be the south edge. We will be playing on map B, as you can see right here in the corner. On the Soviet side, you have elements of the 208th Motorized Brigade. They will set up in the town of Slonim, which covers hexes B802, 803, and 902, and within 6 hexes of any hex of Slonim. They'll get a company of rifle with a supporting medium machine gun platoon. They'll get 3 of those actually. They'll get a submachine gun infantry company, a medium machine gun company, a mortar company with 82mm M37 mortars, a company of BT-7Ms, and a company of BA-10Ms, and their map edge is the north edge. This is a 10-turn scenario. The victory conditions is that the winner is the player that controls Slonim, those 3 hexes already mentioned, as well as the road hexes B801 and B800 by game's end. There are some special rules here at the bottom. We've got, in the first turn, no side can attempt to coordinate officers. We'll talk about that as we get to it. The German player special rule is that the German is the attacker. That will give them a +1 modifier on initiative rolls. The first 3 activations of the first turn are German. And on the Soviet side, the Soviet player sets up first. Okay, so we have our Soviet units deployed. So we have some BT-7s here. Our BA-10s are here. That's our armor, which is pretty light armor, actually. We have a heavy weapons machine gun here, heavy weapons mortar here. Infantry, infantry. Now let's talk about leaders really quickly here. So here we have Captain Chukayov. Okay, you can see the letter in the corner there, the G, that is his company identifier. The 1 is his leadership and command value. The 1 here is his command range, so that's how far away a unit can be from him and still be in command. The 7 is his morale value, which is the base morale for his company. So you would take this and add the 1 to it when doing morale checks, and we'll talk about morale checks as they come up. And the 5 is his movement factor when he is moving on his own. Typically, he will move with his unit. Let's take a look at one of the BT-7s real quick, talk about that. Okay, so here you have your the flag that designates the nation, of course, the unit type. Then you have yellow background is anti-personnel fire factor. That's a 3. The range here is the superscript 3. The white background is anti-tank, so that's 6 firepower with a 4 range. The 2 is his armor. The G is his company designator, and that red dot indicates that that's the size of the unit, and since it's an armored unit, it's a large one, and so it's red. So you have green would be small, like foot, and then you have yellow and red for the larger unit types. And the 18 at the bottom here is his movement factor, and the color of that indicates what kind of movement he has, and this is tracked. So black is tracked, yellow is wheeled, and white is foot. So we'll see some wheeled and some foot in other places here. You can see this infantry, actually, the white 5 there at the bottom, that is his movement factor. You can see the mortar here. It's got a white 3 on a yellow background because that one can be transported. If we pick up our mortar unit here and flip it over, you can see it in its truck, in its mounted format, with a yellow 13. So when it's in a truck, it can move 13. Obviously, it cannot fire. You would have to unmount it, limber it, or unlimber it rather. And that's how that works. And we'll talk about that. When you mount, unmount, limber, unlimber, you use up half your movement for that. And then you can move half your movement and so on and so forth. So kind of similar to a lot of other systems, both at the squad and platoon level in that regard. So nothing particularly revolutionary there. Oh, one other thing, the orange fire factor indicates that that's an artillery unit. So we know that yellow is anti-personnel, white is anti-tank, and orange is artillery. There's also red, which would be a flamethrower unit, which we do not have in this particular scenario. So the Soviets are all set up and ready to go. The town that they're defending is up here. These infantry units right here are basic regular rifle companies. This one here is a submachine gun company. So I've staged our Germans over here. This is the turn 1 Germans. We have a platoon of Panzer 38Ts, two companies of those rather, E and F, under the commands of Hauptmann Raeder and Leutnant Schütze. Leutnant Stiegert here has a motorcycle unit, and just quickly to look at those guys. So you can see a couple things on here. This is the mounted side. This is the mounted side. And as you can see, it has a 15, which indicates that it is a wheeled unit with a 15 movement factor. On the other side is it's unmounted. So as you can see, it's got a firepower of 3 for anti-personnel with a range of 2. The N at the top right is its company designator. It's company N. The green dot means it's a small unit. This impacts spotting, by the way. Then the white 5 on the bottom with a yellow background, that means this is a unit that can be transported, but this is the foot side. The white 5 means it can move 5. Heck, it's got 5 movement factor when it is not on its motorcycles. And the R is something we haven't talked about yet. That means this is a reconnaissance unit which has special abilities, and we'll talk about that when I actually put it out on the map and we move it. All right, so this being turn 1, the Germans actually have the first 3 activations, which is not the normal way the game works. The normal way would be for them to alternate. So I'm going to slide the map up so that we can see the bottom here. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to take one of our tank units under Hauptmann Raeder. These are Panzer 38s. The red 3 is his armor. So you have to account for that when we talk about penetration for anti-tank. Now, as far as the entry row, we can go from 516 to 1116. So right here, kind of in the center at the bottom of the map. I'm going to start these guys in 516. Now, armor also has one other interesting thing. At the very bottom, you see the black 11. So that's a tracked vehicle with a movement factor of 11. Now, they have 2 types of movement. They have both what's called tactical movement, which means you can move that 11 and then actually fire. And they have operational movement, which actually adds 4 extra movement points so that you can actually go a little further, but you cannot fire at the end of that. So the movement points that you have are expended obviously by moving through terrain, and the terrain all has a cost based on both the type of movement and the type of terrain. So here we have tracked, okay, and then in open, tracked costs 2, in rough it costs 3, 2, so on, right? So we'll be moving through mostly open and fields here. Fields cost 2, right? So here you can see if we go straight up, we've got open, then fields, 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 and actually all of those cost 2. Then to move in here would also cost 2. But once he's in here, he's on a trail, and then he can move here for 1. So if we go 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, okay, he's here. Okay, so we have our unit here. He's in a town, a built up area, which actually has a really good defensive value, and we'll talk about that in a moment. This game uses a divisor, which is I don't know if it's unique, but it's unique in the games we've looked at so far, in the Platoon-level series, that is. So we're going to fire here because we can. So that was 11 movement points to get there. And we're going to fire, and we're going to attack this guy right here. The total firepower here is 18, 6 times 3. We have it because we moved. So when you use tactical movement and then fire, you have it, and it becomes half of your total firepower. So our 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now, if we were beyond 4 hexes, we would have to have it again, and then, but that you would round up. So we go to 4.5, round it up to 5. But in this case, it's actually a 9. So on our combat chart here, here's 9. You use the fire factor, and then you roll 2d6. So anything a 9 or lower is good because it's going to be some kind of a hit. Now your attack modifiers, this is for anti-personnel and artillery on this side. Here's our anti-tank on the other side. And so if you have 6 or more vehicle steps in 1 hex, and each platoon is 3 steps, so they do have 6 steps here. That is a -1 to the die roll. So we're just going to say that we're going to get a -1 on our die roll. So we're going to take our 2 dice here. We're going to roll, and we get a 7. Okay, which is the most common result for a 2d6 die roll. So we're in column 9, we get a 7. That's 3. Even with the die roll modifier, it's still a 3. So you take that, and then you apply your divisor for light woods. So here are light woods, and our divisors are in the middle. So we take that, we come over to anti-tank, and it's a half. So you take that, and you round that, and then you round that down. So those 3 hits, halved becomes 1.5, rounded down becomes 1. So that's 1 hit. So what that does is you put a -1 marker on one of your BT7s. I'm going to put it on the bottom one. And then I'm going to put a finished marker here on my tank platoon. Moving on to our second activation, I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. We're going to split this company up, and I'm going to do them individually. So we still have Leutnant Schütze here. So we're going to go 2, 4, 6, and then once we're on the path, it only costs 1. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and we can stop there. Or we could actually push on a little bit more. But I'm actually going to stop here, and I'll explain why in a moment. Then we can take this guy and do the same thing. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. And finally, 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. So that would be our second activation, and we will drop finished markers on these guys. And the reason I did that is to attack now, let's say these guys here in this area, they're going to have to target one hex. So they'll have to split their firepower. The negative side is if they can get 3 hits or something, they could wipe a unit out. But the positive side is we're not going to end up taking a bunch of losses across the entire company. They'll be limited to 1 platoon, hopefully. Before I do our third activation, I want to talk about reaction fire up here. So we have some units here. Now, these machine guns don't have an anti-tank weapon, so they can't really attack the tanks. It wouldn't do anything. But we do have these mortars here. Like the BA-10s, they can't actually see these guys. We do have these woods here, and these, even though these are light woods, they do block line of sight. So direct to here, he can't see him. To here, he can't see him because it cuts through this hex. He can, however, see this guy. So this platoon here would technically be eligible for reaction fire. So there is a way to activate units to put them into reaction. That has not happened because the Soviets have not had an activation yet. But you also cannot put these guys into reaction because it's an artillery unit, even though it's a mortar. It's a barrage weapon, so you look at it that way. So we have these mortars here. They can't react to any of these. So basically you can do whatever you want, because at least with tanks, because the only weapons that could actually fire on this would be this guy up here. And he could, in theory, but he would be reacting on the fly, so his firepower would get halved, and then it would actually get halved again because they're beyond 4 hexes, which is his range. So it would get halved and then halved again. So it would be 12, divided by 2 would be 6, and then it would be a 3. And to do anything with a 3 is extremely difficult. You basically need to roll like a 5 or less to get any hits. And then of course those hits have to we'll have the divisor, and then they'll have to actually penetrate. So you might not have an opportunity to actually do anything here. So that was the thinking there. Now for our motorcycle troops, they are mounted. They're on their motorcycles. So I'm actually going to keep them together. Let me move this up so you can see them again. So it's 2, and then fields cost 3, so that's 5. Then the dispersed buildings is 2, so 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And he can go through here for 13. And then here, we'll go here. That's 15. And then we'll follow up with the officer. He'll go, he's with a platoon here, so he's going to go 2, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13, 15. We'll go this way. And then this one we'll end up doing, let's do the same. Well, 2, 4, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. I think that's right. 2, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13. And let's actually put these guys together. So we'll just do that. 15. All right, we'll drop finished markers on these 3. And that completes our basically 3 free activations. And now the Soviets will get an activation. They're first of the game. So we're going to take our BT-7 here, and we will have them fire on this unit, right, on this hex right here. Now this probably won't do much, but there's no harm in doing it anyway, because it's not reaction fire. And so we do, however, have, so the top one has not taken a step loss, so his firepower is a 6, and he gets full firepower because we're shooting 4 hexes, full firepower. However, this guy has a -1, so his firepower actually gets reduced. Because of the -1, his firepower actually gets reduced by 1 and becomes a 5. So that gives them a total of 11. Now this guy cannot, he's going to have to activate these guys. but he can't fire himself at this because he'd be firing through his own unit, and you're not allowed to do that. So they are firing with a firepower of 11, and so there is no 11 on the combat chart. So here's our combat chart. You can see the closest thing we have is a 10. So basically he would have to roll a 9 before we go into the modifiers. So we do have all 3 units are in 1 hex, so that's a -2 to the die roll. None of the rest of these will apply, but the divisor for being in a built-up area is actually, for anti-tank fire, is a 4. So he's on the 10 column and he gets a -1, but that divisor is going to really make this tough. And he rolled a 4, which is a great roll. So a 10 with a 4 is actually 6 hits. So you divide that by 4 and it becomes a 1.5, and you round down and that becomes just a, actually no, I'm sorry, you round up, so that becomes 2. Okay, so now we have to talk about penetration. So we have 2 hits, and here's our penetration chart. Let me move this up so you can actually see it. So first thing you have to do is find the unit type, which is listed at the bottom. That's a BT7M, so it has an A. So then you go to the gun type. A is a 45mm M1938 L46. The range in hexes is 4, and so that gives you a number, and the number is 4. And the 4, you compare that to the armor on the tanks, and they have an armor of 3. It's greater than the armor, so it does penetrate, and that results in 2 hits to this stack. So both of the tanks here, or 2, I'm going to put them on the bottom too, will receive a -1 step loss. So being in the town, while helpful, wasn't helpful enough because they managed to roll so low. Like a 4 is a really good roll. When we're talking rolls here for combat, you want to roll low. Some games you need to roll high. This game you need to roll low. So that would finish these guys. So now the Germans are done. They don't have any more moves to make. So now what the Russians will do is put some people in reaction. So we're going to put this guy in reaction. And that would be the activation for this guy. And then we'll have this one activate both of his and put them both in reaction. And as I already mentioned, the mortars cannot be put in reaction. What they can do now, though, because it's their turn, is they can do a fire mission on this hex. And so let's do that, because now we can get a look at how artillery works. So in this case, we have an 8. Okay, we have an 8 with an 8 range. Okay, now he has visibility here, so basically this can be a direct fire attack, and this one, if this one attacked, would be an indirect fire attack. So I'll save the example of an indirect attack for turn 3 when we get the German off-board artillery to show this. But for now, we're just going to have this one platoon here fire at our 1 tank. So it's an 8. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4. This field, if there are 3 of those in a row, it blocks line of sight, but it's only 1. And the trees don't affect this because it's straight down the line. You look at the dots in the center, and it is straight down the line. This is all pretty familiar stuff as far as spotting. So here's our spotting chart, right? So this is large because it's red. Now he's sitting in the open down here. So open road trail, it's a 12 to 18 range for spotting. Like I said, they're very easy to see. So obviously he can spot them, and he can also see them because this does not block line of sight. So having gotten all that out of the way, now we resolve this. So he's got an 8 for that, and so we go back to our combat chart, and we're in the 8 row here. And again, you would check these, and none of these actually this is artillery fire, sorry. So you don't have anything really in here. Yeah, there's really nothing in here that's going to affect this. So we're just gonna be in column 8. We're gonna roll 2 dice. he rolled a 12. So I can tell you right now that's not then going to be nothing. So in column 8, a 12 is nothing. It's blank. So that was a fire attack with no impact, and that ends that one's activation. And so that actually will be the last thing we'll do in turn number 1. And then we would move on to turn number 2, in which all of these Germans will come onto the board. However, we will have to roll for initiative. But before that, we have our marker removal phase. So the way this works is you take all the finished markers off. And then you would also take off any reaction markers that you elect to take off, because you can leave them on and leave your units in reaction for the next turn, which we are going to do, because that was the entire point. They went into reaction knowing that the Germans didn't have any more activations, so it wouldn't have made sense to put them in reaction for no reason. Therefore, we knew that we were going to be able to keep these reaction markers on here, and we're just going to turn them. So I'm going to take it, and I'm just going to turn it 90 degrees like that. They're all sideways, so we know that that was not placed this turn. So that would be the end of turn 1. We go on to turn 2. We roll. Well, first you have to check for who's in command. Okay, this is pretty easy. The Soviets did not move. They were all in command, so I know they're all still in command. The Germans, however, did move. These guys, they're all in the same hex with their leader, so they're good. Schütze here has a command range of 4, and his tank platoons are either in the hex with him or adjacent, so he's good. Stigert here, it has a range of 2. He's got 2 platoons with him and 1 up here adjacent. They're all good as well. Reconnaissance, I didn't really talk about this, and I meant to. Because of the R, they're reconnaissance units. That makes them more capable of spotting, and they can also spot for other units. So like they could make it so that Schütze could see somebody, because they have the ability to spot better than what the regular units can. They also have some other impacts, but we'll get into that when and if those actually come up. So let's roll for initiative here to start turn 2. And the Germans rolled a 6 and the Soviets rolled a 4. The Germans actually have a +2 DRM, +1 for being the attacker in the scenario, as well as being +1 for having had initiative in turn 1. So we do have a turn track here on the scenario sheet, and I've moved it to turn 2, and it's still German initiative. So we do have 6 coming on, 6 new companies coming on. 3 are infantry companies supported by 1 medium machine gun platoon, and then 3 others that are supported by nobody. They're just basically rifle platoons, rifle companies. 3 of those, all of them have 3 platoons of infantry, and the first 3 here, A, B, and C, all have, as I mentioned, a supporting machine gun platoon. So the infantry only has a movement of 5, and the machine guns actually only have a movement of 4. So that's a bit of an issue in terms of them moving up through the terrain here. Now the Germans do have initiative, so I think the first thing we should probably do, because of the alternating back and forth with the Soviets, is you have to think about, well, how do I preempt some of what the Soviets are going to try to do, right? We do have some tanks here, of course, and tanks cannot assault. They can support an assault, but to assault, basically, you have to have infantry. So if you're thinking, oh, well, maybe we can slide these guys up and assault those, that's not possible. They don't assault. So, but what we can do is attack them at range, which is, the ideal situation here. Now, they are in light woods. We did inflict 1 step loss on them last turn. What we'll do first is just attack here. So again, we did take one loss for 2 of the 3 platoons here. So we're going to have a 6, a 5, and a 5 for a total of 16. We are firing here. We are within range. They are in light wood, so they will get a little bit of a divisor from that. I believe the divisor for light woods for armor is 2. So not a great divisor, but every little bit helps. So we're in the 16 column here. Okay, we don't have, they do get the -6 steps in one hex. Actually, no, they don't, because we inflicted a loss, so there's only 5 steps in there. Nobody's moved, so there's nothing in there that's going to actually help this much anyway. So we're just going to take our dice and roll this attack. And again, a low roll is good, so a 10 is not. But in this case, because it's such a high firepower attack, a 10 actually gets us 3 hits. 3 hits. Okay, so 3 hits, and then we have to divide those by the divisor, and that leaves us with 1 hit. So the most we can do is 1 step loss here. And then we have to check, of course, for penetration. You find your gun. So here's B Panzer 38T. That's what we have. So it's a 37 millimeter gun. The range is 4, and the penetration at that range is 4, which is higher than their 2. So they do take a step loss. So both of these now have 1 step loss. They are finished. Now we would flip over to the Soviet side, and we'll have the BT-7. So we're just going to have a little bit of a tank duel here. These guys are going to fire back. Of course, he can't fire that way. This one could attack here, but again, it's long range. So he's going to activate his entire formation, and we'll do a long range attack with this 1 platoon to this tank, and these 2 will attack here. Here we're going to have a firepower of 10, and their divisor is a 4. So we'll roll for this. And again, they do get a penalty for being 9 vehicle steps in 1 hex, so they're going to get a -2 die roll modifier. They rolled a 7, so that becomes a 5. And a 5 on the 10 is going to be 5 hits. So their divisor for being in here is 4, because they're in a built-up area, and the 4 leaves them with 1 hit. So 1 hit, we know their penetration actually is type A from before, right here. All right, so they're this 45 millimeter gun. The range is 4. So that is going to be another hit. Now, because we already had a hit on 2 of the 3 platoons, we apply the next hit to the undamaged platoon. So now they've had 3 losses, which is actually equal to their platoon size. And once it exceeds that, we're going to have to start taking morale checks. Okay, so I'm thinking we attack here, from here to here. So we just need to check line of sight. And luckily, I brought my pencil. Give me something to write on, man. All right, there we go. That looks good to me. Shot. So the firepower is a 6. The range is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it is within twice his gun's range, which of course is 4. So 6 halved is 3. There is a 3 on the fire factor chart. So he's going to have to really roll low because he's not moving, but he is in clear terrain. So we have to roll really low here, but there's no real harm. So we roll a 4. So that's pretty good. A 4 is 3 hits. Now the divisor for that particular terrain open is 2, which of course 3 divided by 2 is 1. So here's our penetration. We know it's a type A. The range is 7 and it's a 3. So only if you go out to 8 does it really make you essentially not hit. So they're going to take a one step loss as well. So that finishes this company's activation, and now we switch back to the Germans. Now you might say, well, we had two different attacks here, but it's the same unit. So when you activate, just like in Nations at War, for example, you're activating the entire company in this case. If we activate this unit, so we're going to do that. We're going to activate Schütze's company here, and we're going to move our tanks up. So maybe we bring him, we start with him, and we go 1, 2. He could stop here, I think. But the distance, 1, 2, 3, 4, actually we'll go here. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, because we can now fire there. So we're going to do that. We're going to fire at this guy with him, and he's going to get a half again because just that was tactical movement. So his 6 firepower becomes a 3. And so we're going to fire, and our range is 4. So we're going to roll here. There are no modifiers because there's only the 1 platoon in there. And we rolled a 6, and a 6 with a firepower of 3 is nothing. So that wasn't particularly great. But now we can continue. So we'll go 2, 4. We'll do the same thing. His firepower is a 5, which gets halved to 2.5, which becomes a 3. So again, we're on the 3 column. Again, we'll need to roll low. He's attacking this hex right here. We rolled a 10, so that's also going to be nothing. The Germans are not rolling particularly well here. Okay, and now we have our last one here. So we'll go 2, 4, 6. And he will also attack this one right here. Or maybe we'll just attack this hex. Why not? 1, 2, 3. So again, it's going to be halved to 2 or 3. We're going to roll again. And we got a 7. And again, that's going to be nothing. And we'll drop a finished on there. Now we go back to the Soviets. They really don't have a whole lot they can do at this point. I think what they will do is, well, let's maybe be a little aggressive and throw our BA-10s into the mix here. Lieutenant Maltzer's company, and we're going to take our 2 BA-10s here, and we're going to go 2, 3, 4, and stop here. Now he's blocking the shot of this one, so maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe we go here and go to 7. And now we're going to attack this hex right here. So we have it, but there's 2, so that becomes it's a 6. Okay, the range is not an issue. So we're going to take this and we're going to roll, and we're going to roll a 7. So a 7 on the 6 is actually a 2. All right, so 2 divided by 2 is 1. So they are going to get a hit here. And at range 1, the penetration, because just like the BA-10, the BT-7, or rather just like the BT-7, the BA-10, has a gun, the 45 millimeter. Range 1 penetration is a 6. That's definitely greater. So that is a hit. Now here's an interesting point that we have to check now for. So obviously, first of all, he gets a step loss. Now, secondly, that's the second step loss for that particular company. Or yes, second step loss. It's a 3 platoon company. So we don't have to worry about morale yet, but we do have to roll to check for a casualty. Since they took a hit, you have to check for a casualty to the commander. So we have to find out if Schütze gets hit here. So 2 things. 1, I forgot to do it down here. So apologies for that. I'll have to remember to make a note of that I did forget to check the casualty there. So the way this works is you roll 1d6, and you need a 1 for the officer to become casualty, but you get a die roll modifier for every hit that you have taken in that combat. So there was 1 hit, officer. So in this case, unless I roll a 1 or a 2, Schütze is fine. And we rolled a 4, so he's okay. All right, so that finishes this unit. Now the officer Maltzer here can also move. So he'll go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And we'll say he'll stop right here. And he's going to attack the same one. So again, then this time it's just a firepower of 3 because it's halved. And he rolls a 3. So the Soviets are rolling really well. A 3 is actually 4 hits. Now the divisor again is 2, so that makes it 2. But still, 2 hits could kill this unit. And we know that the penetration value is actually going to be a 6. So it does inflict 2 hits. It does kill this unit. And now we also have to check again for Schütze to see if he survives or not. So this time we need a 5 or a 6, and we get a 3. So Schütze is also killed. So this is a good example of combat, because you see what happens. Now we will have to pull a replacement officer for Schütze, and I'll do that in a moment. We'll mark this guy finished. We also will now, we've taken 4 step losses on this company, so we'll also have to take a morale check as well. So this is a company morale check because we lost our officer and we had a platoon eliminated. And we also have exceeded our total number of platoons in the company via step losses. We have 4 step losses in a company that was comprised of 3 platoons. So we've got like three things that would trigger this morale check. So we roll 2d6, and if the result obtained is less than or equal to the morale of the company, now the company's morale is a 7, so we have to roll a 7 or less. And if it's greater than that, then we fail the morale check, and we'll get into that if we fail it. So let's roll 2 dice, and we roll a 3. So we pass the morale check. Now, if we had failed the morale check, it depends on how much greater than the morale it is. If it's between 1 and 4 greater, the company is routed. So we'd have to place a route marker on our 2 remaining platoons. And they have to route, which involves retreating towards the map at southern map edge, the German map edge. If it's even higher than that, it actually disintegrates and is eliminated from the game. And if it's already routed and fails a morale check, then if it's only 3 greater, it would cause it to disintegrate. So they don't disintegrate. We do need to grab a new officer. So you're supposed to grab one randomly, which I did, and we get here Unterofficer Endres. And so he can be placed with either of the 2 platoons. So we're going to put him with this platoon right here. So we have a new replacement officer now. Basically, he gets promoted to company commander. But that's a big loss there for the Germans. As I said, they have not rolled well, and the Soviets actually have rolled well. So that actually completes the Soviets' activation for that one, and we would now move over back to the Germans. I could show double time. So let me just do 1. I'll do 1 to show you what double time looks like. So we'll take Hauptmann Abel here. He's got a rifle company, 3 platoons of infantry plus a supporting MG-34 platoon. Now the infantry is all 5 and the machine gun is a 4. Moving through open by foot only costs 1. So they could do something like 1, 2, 3, and then rough costs 2. So they could actually just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? I probably won't do that because of the mortar. So if we go 1, 3, 5. So let's do that. So we're going to take our entire company and go 1, 3, 5. What double time allows you to do is it basically increases your movement factor by 1. 1, 3, 5. Okay, so he's in light woods. I don't think these guys can reach. The mortar, in theory, could. But let's just do this for example's sake anyway. It's not like we're killing it from the German side anyway. So we're going to put a double time marker on there, because you can't do that 2 turns in a row. So he gets this double time marker, which indicates that he did it in the previous turn, and I'll leave that on there until he activates again, and then in turn 3, and then I can pull it off, but we know he can't use it this turn. He's still within command range of Hauptmann Abel. They get a finished marker, and that ends their activation, and it goes back to the Soviets. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish turn 2 off shot. I'll come back, I'll show what happened, where everything is. There probably won't be much combat. It's going to mostly be movement. Here's our situation at the end of the turn 2. So, oops, I did forget to mark that finished. So up here we have our motorcycle company. They basically went into the light woods dismounted, so they're now ready to move in. And what I'm planning to do with them is I'm planning to assault the mortars. I brought all of my infantry onto the board. All of the turn 2 stuff, that's all down here now. They're all finished. Our mortars did attack. They attacked this unit here, but didn't do any damage, so they're just marked finished, as is that unit. So that's the situation at the end of turn 2. This stuff up here you already saw. I'm going to pull all this off, well, all the finished markers off, and we'll move on to turn 3. I'll roll for initiative. We'll check command, although everybody's in command, and we'll just do, I'll do probably an artillery mission just to start, to show you what it looks like, how it works, the mechanics. Okay, so let's talk about artillery. So we are going to declare an artillery. We need an officer for spotting. We're going to use our recon officer right here. And we're going to try to hit our mortar right here. So we're going to drop this on top. Now, there is an artillery, an off-board artillery chart, which is here. Whoops, here. So full strength, because we're 105 full strength according to the scenario rules. So up to 100, no. Up to 120, yes. If it was depleted, it would be only 6 firepower, but it's full, so it's 10. So this is a fire factor of 10 on this attack. So the first thing you have to do is roll to see if you actually get a 1, 2, or 3. We do get to subtract 1 for Stigert because he's a recon officer. So if we roll this and we get a 3, that means it, even without the adjustment, we get it's on target. So it's on target and we're ready to rock and roll here. So now we just roll our attack like we would normally. All right, so we get a 5. So a 5 in the 10 column, here on our combat chart, 10 column, 5 is 5 hits. Okay, so 5 hits. The divisor for a field on an artillery attack is a 2. So 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. That becomes 2 hits. So we're going to hit that that mortar twice. So I'm going to remove this. We drop a -2 marker, and I'll show you why here in a second. So we have this guy here, but you can see his movement factor is it with a yellow box. That means he has transport, and there it is. So since his flip side is transport, instead of flipping him, because we can't, we put this -2 marker on there to indicate that he's taken 2 step losses. We put him back with the 2 step losses. Now we have to check for a casualty for the officer. They took 2 hits, so if we roll a 3 or less, then Captain Koleganov has been killed, and we rolled a 1, so he has also become a casualty, which means their company will now have to take a morale check as well, and he gets replaced by Sergeant Litvyak. So he gets dropped on there. Now we have to do a morale check, so it's a 7. And we roll 2 dice, and we get a 7, so they pass the morale check, so they do not rout. Now if they did rout, you might wonder what are the impacts of routing. So it has to conduct routed movement. In subsequent turns, it can't move or be activated unless it gets fired upon. They cannot conduct defensive fire, but so they have to rally basically, and you rally by rolling against the morale. Again, using your officer. Now he has a 0, but some officers will have a leadership value of greater than 0, and you would actually add that to your morale as a modifier. So they have to move away from the hex that caused the rout. So this being artillery, they're just going to move towards their map edge, which would be the north edge. So everybody that's in the same hex would have to move. So this platoon plus the sergeant would have to go together, and that one would go together. There's only 1 there, so obviously. So infantry has to move 3 hexes. Vehicles have to move 5. So as I mentioned earlier, what I'm going to do here is actually end the video. I've tried to show as much of the system as I can without this becoming super long. The idea is to kind of just give you a basic gist of everything. And I know I didn't show assault, But as I mentioned earlier, I'm planning on kind of doing an assault piece as part of the recap on all the games. Once I'm done, whether it's 4 games or 6 games, I'll cover assault in the recap so that you can see all systems together at the same time. And we'll also talk about other things too, like attack and movement and rally and route and morale and leadership and all kinds of things that these systems all kind of have in common to some extent. We're going to look at the ways in which all of these kind of model platoon level tactical combat. That's the whole point of the series. So that is actually going to do it. This is kind of an interesting scenario, and the Germans I don't think are doing all that well. And I wasn't really trying to, I don't know, I was kind of pushing a little bit more aggressively than I may have if I were actually just playing this out, because we do have 10 turns, and I pushed my tanks into positions where if they didn't roll well, they were going to get chopped up, which is exactly what happened. The Soviets rolled pretty well, the Germans did not, and we've actually lost a platoon. We had a leader killed. On the Soviet side, we had a leader killed, but that was through an artillery attack and not actually via combat. The German ground forces haven't really rolled particularly well, especially these guys, the tanks. They haven't really done much in terms of damage against these relatively thin-skinned Soviet units. Like these BA-10s, I think they're probably going to get chopped up pretty good here pretty soon, because the Germans, the range is going to be short for these guys, and these BA-10s have a 1 armor, so they're not going to be stopping anything here. So that is going to do it. If you have questions, comments, corrections, because I'm sure I screwed some stuff up, there isn't a ton out there in YouTube world for this game or this series system of the Warstorm series. I think this is a really good system, and it maybe just gets overlooked a little bit. But so yeah, like I said, I mean, I did read the rule book, and I used the 2.1 rules here for this game, which was actually released with version 1 rules. So I'm reading rules for Help Arrives, which is the most recent game in the series, and applying them to this game, which was, I think, the 3rd game in the series. I believe Alas Barricadas, I think, was first, and then La Bataille de France was second, and then this guy. Those were all released by Compass. And then the publisher switched to Draco Ideas, and they released Normandy, the Beginning of the End, and also Help Arrives. And the upcoming Desert Struggle is actually going to be published by NAC Wargames. So I am looking forward to that. I am on the pre-order for that one, and hopefully that shows up fairly soon. I think this is a good system. I've got to be honest, I kind of like tactical games a lot anyway, and I haven't played any of these that I haven't liked. And the next game up will be Platoon Commander Deluxe, which I have played, and I actually have video content on that game already. So we'll be taking kind of a re-look at it, and I will do some new stuff on it. But I like that series a lot. So that one will be a lot of fun for me as well. So that will do it. My name's Joe. This has been Hexed Encountered. Please consider liking, sharing, and/or subscribing. And until we meet again, I want to wish you all happy gaming.